The stars above Varith Prime had never looked so cold. Emperor Kael Veyron stood at the apex of his throne room, a cathedral of black obsidian and stolen gold, and watched the flickering holographic feed with something he had never experienced in 300 years of conquest: doubt. "They are still advancing," whispered his Grand Vizier, tail curled low in submission. "The human fleet, your eternal magnificence. They do not stop." Kael turned slowly. His 7 eyes blinked in staggered sequence, a habit his species showed only when processing the impossible. "Nothing stops," he said flatly. "Everything has a price. Everything has a breaking point." He gestured to the viewport. Beyond the reinforced transparent steel, the Keth Dominion's orbital defense grid blazed with laser fire, missile volleys, and the screaming violet light of mass drivers. "Find theirs." The Vizier did not answer. He was already watching the feed. The human fleet was eating the fire. It had begun, as most catastrophic miscalculations do, with arrogance. 47 years ago, the Keth Dominion had encountered the third human colony vessel drifting near the Saren corridor. A primitive ship. Slow. Unarmed. The crew, 112 souls, had broadcast on every frequency in broken galactic standard, offering trade, offering peace, offering friendship. Emperor Kael Veyron had offered them chains. Humanity, he had decided after brief study, was an ideal slave species. Bipedal. Dexterous. Emotionally complex enough to be manipulated, physically resilient enough to endure hard labor, and, most importantly, utterly alone in a galaxy that had already decided not to care about them. The Dominion had raided 4 more colony ships. Then an outpost. Then a station. Then, when humanity sent a single diplomatic cruiser to negotiate the release of 3,000 enslaved people, Kael had executed the ambassador on live galactic broadcast and sent back the ship as scrap. He had done this to 19 other species before. 17 of them were still in chains. 2 no longer existed. He had expected humanity to become the 18th. He had been wrong. Admiral Ethan Cross had not slept in 6 days. This was not unusual. In the 14 years since the Liberation Fleet's founding, sleep had become something of a philosophical concept for him, something other people did, somewhere else, in a galaxy that was not actively on fire. He stood on the bridge of the UHSV Endurance, United Humanity ship vessel, a designation that still felt new, still felt earned, and watched the battle unfold across 17 holographic screens simultaneously. His crew moved around him like a tide, voices clipped and precise, hands fast. "Sector 7, their third defense platform is rotating," called Lieutenant Sarah Okafor from Tactical. "They're trying to cross-cover the gap we opened." "Let them rotate," Cross said. He pointed to the screen. "Commander Reyes, push the 9th and 11th through that gap before it closes. Don't engage the platform directly, thread past it and hit the orbital relay station at coordinate Delta 9. That relay station is heavily shielded, sir. It won't be in 40 seconds. He looked to his left. "Kowalski." "Already aimed, Admiral," said the weapons officer without looking up. "Firing in 38. Cross almost smiled. Almost. He had learned, long ago, not to celebrate before the war was over. 3,000 slaves on those first colony ships. He remembered every face in the files. Every name. He had read them all during the early years, when the Liberation Fleet was 3 decommissioned cargo vessels with improvised weapons and enough fury to power a sun. Now they were 400 warships deep in the heart of Keth space. Now he was almost ready to smile. "Admiral." His comms officer, young Patel, turned with wide eyes. "We're receiving a direct transmission. Encrypted on Keth Imperial channels. It's from Emperor Veyron himself, sir." The bridge went quiet for exactly 1 second. Then everyone kept working, because Ethan Cross had trained them to keep working. "Put him on," Cross said. The Emperor's face filled the primary screen. 7 eyes. Silver blue scales. A crown of sharpened bone taken, Cross knew from intelligence reports, from the skull crests of defeated enemy leaders. Kale Veyron looked at the human admiral with the particular expression of a predator trying to decide whether something small and strange was dangerous or merely annoying. "You are the one they call Cross," Veyron said. His translator rendered the words in flat, precise English. "I am. I have crushed 19 species." The Emperor's voice carried the boredom of a man reciting a grocery list. 19 peoples who believed, as you apparently believe, that courage was sufficient substitute for power. They were wrong. You are wrong. Cross said nothing. "I am prepared," Veyron continued, "to offer you terms. Withdraw your fleet. Return to your systems. I will reduce the labor quotas on your enslaved people by 40%. I will allow limited family units to remain intact." A pause. "This is generosity you have not earned." The bridge crew kept working. Screens flickered. Data streamed. Somewhere in Sector 7, Cross could see the 9th and 11th squadrons threading the gap. In 20 seconds, the relay station at Delta 9 would go dark. "Emperor Veyron," Cross said, and his voice was very calm, very quiet, the voice of a man who had spent 14 years becoming exactly the thing the galaxy had insisted humanity could never be. "I want to explain something to you." Kale's eyes narrowed, all 7. "Every species you enslaved," Cross continued, "made the same calculation. Can we win this war?" And when the math looked bad, they negotiated. They accepted terms. They survived, some of them, by becoming small. He paused. Humanity made a different calculation. And what calculation was that? "We didn't ask if we could win." Cross looked directly into the camera. "We asked how long we were willing to bleed to make sure you couldn't." On screen, the Delta 9 relay station bloomed into a silent flower of fire. Across the Keth defense grid, 17 systems went dark simultaneously. Targeting solutions degraded. Point defense networks dropped offline. And in that sudden, catastrophic blindness, 400 human warships accelerated. "There is no version of this," Cross said, "where you keep a single human in chains. There is no price we won't pay, no distance we won't cross, no loss we won't absorb. We have been bleeding for 47 years, Your Majesty." The title came out flat, carrying nothing. "We're very good at it now." Kale Veyron's 7 eyes moved rapidly across screens that were filling with disaster reports. His Grand Vizier was shouting something. His admirals were screaming for orders. "You would spend trillions," Veyron said, and for the first time his voice carried something raw, something almost like the doubt Cross had never thought a conqueror could feel. "You would spend a generation, your civilization, for slaves you've never met?" "They're not slaves," Cross said simply. "They're ours." Verith Prime fell in 11 hours. Not because humanity was invincible. 312 ships were lost in those 11 hours. 9,441 crew members died. Ethan Cross would read every name. He always did. But the Keth Dominion, which had consumed worlds and chained species and burned diplomats alive on broadcast feeds, had been built on a foundational assumption that every civilization had a threshold, a point where the cost of resistance exceeded the cost of surrender. They had never encountered a species that had decided, collectively, quietly, in the holds of raided colony ships and the cells of labor camps and the sterile offices of a liberation fleet that didn't exist yet, that there was no such threshold. Not for this. Not for their people. Emperor Kale Veyron was taken alive. He would stand trial before a galactic tribunal, the first such proceeding in recorded history, representing 17 enslaved species and 47 years of documented atrocities. He kept asking, throughout the proceedings, throughout the long months of testimony and evidence, the same question in different forms. Why? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you calculate the losses and stop? Admiral Ethan Cross, when called to testify, answered him directly. Because they were ours, he said again. You never understood what that meant. That was your error. He paused. It was also your last one. The freed slaves, 219,000 human beings across 9 labor worlds, came home to a civilization that had spent 14 years and unimaginable cost making sure there was a home for them to return to. Some of them had been born in chains. None of them would die there. Above Verith Prime, in the cold light of a foreign star, the flag of united humanity flew from the spire of an obsidian palace. The stars had never looked so warm.